Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Mullen, I want to thank you and the other witnesses for your service. I understand you didn't interview Secretary Clinton. Did you submit written questions to her for her response?
We did not.
Was Secretary Clinton aware of the attacks on Western targets in Benghazi leading up to September 11, 2012?
I believe our information.
I'm asking Admiral Mullen.
Was, yeah.
I'm asking Admiral Mullen.
I think she was.
She was aware of the attacks on Western targets. Was she aware that the British ambassador was almost assassinated in Benghazi in the weeks and months leading up to September 11, 2012?
I mean, I can't be positive, but I think she was.
Was she aware of the request for additional security at the Benghazi facility?
I would say no.
Was she aware of a specific request from the ambassador himself for improved security at that facility?
We never saw any request from Ambassador Stevens to.
That wasn't my question. Was she aware of it?
We never saw anything that indicated Ambassador Stevens asked for a significant upgrade at the facility.
Well, there's been testimony that he has. My question was she aware of that? Was the Secretary of State aware of it?
I don't know the answer to that.
All right. And here's what I found confounding about that. The 1998 ARB, you start your ARB with a quote from a Spanish-American philosopher about history, and those who don't study it are doomed to repeat it. And I found that interesting because the 1998 ARB recommended this: the Secretary of State should personally review the security of embassies and other official premises, closing those which are highly vulnerable and threatened. The Secretary of State, that was the specific recommendation from history. So you can understand, with all due respect to my colleagues who don't want to mention the Secretary of State's name, you can understand my question: did she personally review the security at Benghazi?
I don't know that. Not all the evidence that we saw indicated no, but I don't know the answer to that.
Did she personally consider closing the facility in Benghazi? Again, given the fact that a panel exactly like the one you co-chaired recommended the Secretary of State personally review it. My question to you is, did she?
I'm not aware that she did.
So there is no evidence, despite a previous recommendation from an ARB just like yours, because what our colleagues on the other side say is, let's don't study the past, let's just look forward. You've made recommendations, all's going to be well now, all 30 of them will be implemented. And my point is, we had this recommendation. We had it in 1998, that the Secretary of State herself review the facilities and consider closing them if they are not safe.
I think one of the, and I think we have pulled people out where it wasn't safe over the course of that.
But my question, Admiral, is you never interviewed the Secretary of State about whether she accepted and performed a responsibility given to her by a previous accountability review board.
Part of our writ was to look at previous accountability review boards. We certainly commented on that, those that had not been implemented, but it was not to test each recommendation against those who were in positions in the current administration.
I want to read you a quote, and I want to ask you if you know the author of that quote, okay? The Independent Accountability Review Board is already hard at work looking at everything, not cherry-picking one story here or one document there, but looking at everything. Do you know who the author of that quote was? Secretary Clinton. How could you look at everything when you don't even bother to interview the person who is ultimately responsible for what happens at the State Department?
I think we've explained that we found no evidence that she was involved in the decision-making and no need, therefore, to do that.
But I just cited for you, it is her responsibility. According to an ARB just like yours from 1998, she should personally review it. Did you ask her whether she was familiar with that previous ARB recommendation?
We didn't interview her, so obviously we didn't ask her.
I will read you another quote. Over the last several months, there was a review board headed by two distinguished Americans, Mike Mullen and Tom Pickering, who investigated every element of this, with this being Benghazi? Do you know the author of that quote?
No.
Barack Obama. Did you interview him and ask whether he made any calls to any of our allies in the region and said, can you help us? Our guys are under attack.
We did not.
Admiral, my colleague Jason Chaffetz asked you about Cheryl Mills and a conversation you had with her. And I noted 2 different times. You said you wanted to give her a heads up. And make no mistake, she's the lawyer for Hillary Clinton. She's the counsel for the State Department. You wanted to give her a heads up. A heads up about what?
I specifically said that having interviewed Charlene Lamb and knowing that she was going to appear in Congress, that I thought she would not be, that she would be a weak witness.
Were you concerned that she would tell the truth or not tell the truth? When you say not be a good witness, what was your concern?
I wasn't concerned about whether she'd tell the truth or not.
Well,
that had nothing to do with it.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I thought there was a practice of going 2 minutes over. I don't know why I possibly could have thought that based on being here for the
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the gentleman be given another minute, because I'd like to hear the answer to that question myself.
Sure.
Without objections to order.
Thank you. Could you answer his question? The last question.
Maybe you could repeat the question.
the question was a heads up about what? Were you concerned that she would tell the truth or not tell the truth?
No, that had nothing to do with it. I don't take, would never question the integrity of Charlene.
Did you think she was just not going to be an effective witness?
I didn't.
Well, the gentleman just let him answer. That's why I just want to get it for him.
I'm trying to help him, man.
He's been around 40 years in the military, so he knows how to answer a question.
I explained before, Mr. Gowdy, I had run departments. I had dealt with witnesses who came to Congress and representing the departments that I was in as best we possibly could. The intention of the heads up was to just having sat down with Lamb, it was the first time I met her in our interview, that I thought there could be better witnesses to represent the department. Had nothing to do with the ARB.
Better witnesses from what standpoint?
At that time and place with respect to the events which had occurred in Benghazi.
Well, Admiral, wasn't she a fact witness? I mean, the facts pick the witnesses. I mean, the State Department doesn't pick witnesses. The facts pick the witnesses. She was a fact witness, right?
Right.
So whether she's good or bad is immaterial. She's a fact witness.
Again, I approached it from the standpoint of having run a department and many times working to have the department represented as best as we possibly could. That was it.
Well, in conclusion, Admiral, let me just tell you from my previous life, I well understand having bad witnesses. I had plenty of cases where I wished I could have picked them, but I couldn't. She was a fact witness. The fact that she was not going to be a good fact witness for the State Department, to me, is immaterial. She's a fact witness.
This is one. With the gentleman, you're on minute time that we neither one of us have. But just one thing, gentleman, you real quick.
Sure.
This is the question, and the reason why I want to hear your answer is. This has, as I'm listening to you, this has nothing to do with honesty and integrity with regard to what the witness would say. Nothing like that. And I mean, what did it have to do with? In other words, is this somebody, for example, if it's somebody who may not know the facts, may not understand? I mean, just what?
I mean, I take Mr. Gowdy's point. She certainly was a fact witness. It was, from my perspective, a judgment that she hadn't done this before. Obviously, this was a terribly important issue, and to be able to represent that, particularly early in the process, I thought was very important, and that was the sole reason.
And I take it that you wanted the best information to come to the ARB.
At that point, sure. Right. To the Congress. To the Congress.
Very well.
This had nothing to do with the ARB.
All right. All right.
I yield back.
Thank you. We'll now recognize